Aikwe. This is Melita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I will be talking about my June wrap-up. Now, for June, I read 8 books. This is a bit more than usual for me, but I do have a bit more free time on my hands. The university I work for, I don't work during the summer, so that frees up some time in terms of busy work, but I am still working for myself. I am a freelance illustrator, so there's that. With those 8 books, my stats are that I read 2,552 pages. I read 3 nonfictions, 4 contemporaries, and 1 dystopian. And then in terms of my ratings, I have 0 1 stars, 1 2 star, 3 3 stars, 3 4 stars, and 1 5 star. And in terms of format, I listened to 5 audiobooks, 2 through Audible, and the rest were from my library, and then read 1 ebook through my library and 2 physical books. The first book I listened to through Audible was Rabid, A Cultural History of the Most Diabolical Virus. This is by Bill Wasik and Monica Murphy, and this is a nonfiction. But basically, I started reading this because I wanted to wrap my mind around the current pandemic without actually reading about the pandemic. Like, I'm still getting news updates of what's going on, but I didn't necessarily want... I've been avoiding anything with pandemics in general or epidemics just because I know that that my anxiety can't take it. So to read something that is similar but more off base than anything was just helpful in terms of wrapping my mind around it in terms of viruses. This book is about rabies, and basically its cultural history as Bill Wasik and Monica Murphy know it. And it was really interesting, actually. I found it very informative. It was a little info dumpy in places where it felt like it lagged or stretched on a little too long. But ultimately, it was fairly curious in that there are theories that it had an effect on stories such as vampires and werewolves and zombies. So that in itself was interesting. It was also interesting because it was something that I grew up learning about in terms of being precautionary of if I get bit by an animal that I don't know, whether it be dog or cat, or if it was just a wild animal that living in a rural area, it's one of those things of you have to go get these series of shots if you get bit by anything. And it was always a warning growing up, and I remember my brother getting bit by a squirrel and him having to go get these series of shots. So living in a rural area, it's something that I feel like everyone kind of warns us about growing up. But I hadn't known of any rabies cases in the area until this book, which actually talks about a girl in Willow Creek, which is 50 miles away from my house, who was Wiot, which is a tribe in this area. That was interesting in itself. But the virus itself is really interesting in itself just because there is no cure for it, in that it's all about prevention, and there's vaccines, and the vaccine is essentially supposed to help us fight off the virus. But that's as soon as we know we got bit by something, because as soon as the symptoms start showing, it's too late. Usually. Definitely, it was very fascinating and definitely helped wrap my mind around it. But yeah, so that was definitely interesting. It was 3 out of 5 stars for me. Probably more a 3.5, really. Interesting enough. Would I read it again? Probably not, but I do suggest that if you're looking for an interesting history on a virus, rabies is definitely one of them. Second book that I read for June was a physical book, and that's been on my TBR for a bit, and that is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. This follows Penny Talbot. She lives in the town of Sparrow in Oregon, along the Oregon's coast. She lives on Lumiere Island, which is just off the town of Sparrow. And 2 centuries ago, the town of Sparrow drowned 3 sisters who they accused of being witches. Since that time, every summer for a brief period of time, I believe it's from June 1st until June 20th, approximately of the summer solstice. The three sisters come back and take over three girls in Sparrow and go and drown boys. No one knows who the sisters inhabit. It changes every year. And basically the town has kind of made a tourist attraction out of this spectacle for like morbid curiosity. Everyone's always curious and wants to come visit this town just to see if it's true. They want to see the bodies, which I didn't really like that premise at all, really, of the whole tourist aspect of it. Whoops. I didn't like the tourist aspect of it. Penny doesn't either, the main character in here. She doesn't like that it's just turning into a spectacle like that. She feels it's right, but she also has mixed feelings about Sparrow. And then Beau Carter comes to town just before June 1st, I believe, with his own agenda. He's not a tourist. This was an interesting premise. I do enjoy witchy books. I wish this was more witchier. I enjoyed the aspects of the sisters when it did have their stories come into place as they did little things of making perfumes or just little things. It kind of had like this practical magic the movie vibe to me. I had my issues with this book, and I'm not sure why. I didn't really connect to any of the characters. Penny, I also for some reason had the problem that Sparrow is not a real town, and for some reason that really took me out of the story. I don't know why Shea Earnshaw made that choice. This book was not for me. Ultimately wasn't very impressed with the book overall. I think I originally put this as 3 stars, and I feel like that's more of a peer pressure as I looked through BookTube and realized that people really enjoyed it. I think I'm going to lower this to 2 stars. The next book I read was another audiobook, and this was More Myself by Alicia Keys, and basically I believe it's her memoir. I'm very picky choosy when it comes to music. There's very few musicians who I like all of their albums or all of an album. Usually it's a couple of favorites. However, Alicia Keys, despite having only a couple favorites in her music I feel like has been around all my life. So I saw that her memoir came out this year. This was a 2020 release. And I really enjoyed it. I listened to her and I love the fact that she narrated it herself, as well as got guest narrators, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, her husband, don't remember his name. Listening to her story, really, it was really nice. On The Voice or any other thing that I saw her on or just even her music was just a calming factor to me. So to listen to her memoir, and it made her life more real for me, if that makes sense. Alicia opened my eyes in terms of questioning history, in terms of questioning who's telling it. So she talks about going to Egypt and wanting to know more about Egypt, but not from white colonial perspective. Everyone has their own history. It's not just what the white colonialism history is, and I should know better than that. I mean, something that I fight for with Native American history definitely helps broaden my mind in terms of it's not just Native American history, it's Egypt's history, it's everyone's history that's not white colonialism. So that was nice, and I appreciate her for opening my eyes more to that. Yeah, it was just an overall great book. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's more of a 4.5. This next book I listened to from my library. I did get Libby in June, and man, I'm surprised I should have got that sooner. Like, why didn't I get that sooner? Yeah, game changer. So this one, I listened to through my library, and I immediately had to go get the physical copy. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This one, holy shit. So this is a book written in verse, which I'm finding I love. For some reason, I was very just, once again, narrow-minded. I didn't think I liked books written in verse, except for Elizabeth Acevedo or Sarah Crossan. But with this one in particular, I remember this coming out in 2017 and BookTube freaking out about it, but for some reason, I didn't think I would connect with it. When I saw this available through Libby, I was like, okay, sure, why not? Mostly because it wasn't that long. So I listened to it and I didn't stop. I listened to it in one sitting. It was great. I absolutely love it. I hope to get the audiobook version of this as well. just because that's just how I enjoy listening and reading books in verse. So this one in particular follows Will. His older brother Sean has been shot, and all that keeps going through his mind are the rules. No crying, no snitching, revenge. This book was really impactful, so just touching and moving, and holy crap. Like, I can feel myself starting to well up now. So this was just amazing. 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend it if you haven't picked it up already. Before I get into this next book, I forgot to mention that I did participate in a readathon in June, and that was a vaultathon hosted by Margaret Storton Becker. Sorry if I mispronounced that. From the Nerd Word. And basically the vaultathon takes not as popular Disney movies, so takes it from the vault and creates a readathon around some of the topics the movie surrounds. So for this round, it was Brother Bear. There is also a watch along as well as a live show at the end of the readathon. There's also a group book and several prompts. And I don't think Long Way Down fit any prompts for some reason. When I started reading it, and even after I was finished reading it, I kept thinking there was a prompt for siblings, particularly brothers, because Brother Bear, and that just wasn't the case. So I'm counting it towards Vaultathon, even though it doesn't fit any of the challenges. But the group book, of course, encompassed all the challenges, and that was I Can Make This Promise by Christina Day. And this is a middle grade that follows Eddie. For all her life, Eddie knew that she was Native, but she doesn't know like what tribe she is. In fact, she knows little to nothing about her culture, as her mom is Native, her dad is white, but her mom was adopted by a white family. So when her best friends and her are in her attic and they stumble across a box with Eddie's real name on it, Edith, that contains older pictures and journals and letters, Eddie makes the connection that this is someone from her mom's past that she was named after, that she didn't know about and wants to know about. This was a cute middle grade, honestly. It was relatively nice. It's set in Seattle. It is own voices. It's based loosely on the author's life, who I believe she said that she was also adopted by a white family. And it does into depth about that, which I appreciated. It goes into ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. There was a couple of things that I had issues with when reading this book. Okay, there will be spoilers. If you still want to read this book and don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. I'll put a little thing down here that has spoilers, and when it goes away, you can come back. So with this book, Eddie, I keep calling her Eddie, it's probably Edie, wants to know more about her cultural background, which is completely understandable. I kept expecting this book to go in a direction that it didn't. So I kept waiting for her to confess to her mom that she found this. That her mom goes, oh, yeah, okay, I'm ready to have, or like, let's go somewhere and we can both get this information. Because her mom, Lisa, doesn't know, we assume, this information either. But it turns out that Lisa knew not only that they were Native American, but what tribe they were, what her family history is, and even got to meet her and reconnect with her family. So to me, it's kind of odd to me that she withheld this information from Edie, and I didn't quite understand why. And it was something that I brought up on the live show that no one had an answer for. However, I am currently listening to There, and that, to me, a helpful way for me to wrap my mind around this. And that is that I am privileged to know who I am, where I came from, and the fact that my family is so into genealogy that we can trace our lineage back for generations. And that we are comfortable enough with our identity and with our family that we can continue telling our story. Not everybody has that, and I had to check my privilege on that. Yes, to me, it seemed odd to me to withhold that information from your daughter when she is so obviously interested in that. But after listening to There, I understand that not everyone feels comfortable with telling their story. Not everyone feels comfortable with their native culture or the information that they were able, the little information they were able to get to pass it on. So that was definitely something that I had to check myself on. So that was definitely interesting, and I appreciate it better now that I understand that. I think because of that, this book has become more of a 4.5. I still am not giving it a full 5, but that's my own issue that I have to amend, is that I wanted more information in it, but I understand that it's a middle grade, and I'm trying to work out what information, if there really needs to be more information. Mostly because, yes, it's a pretty heavy topic to note that the littlest things were worked against Native American families when it came to keeping a child, that social workers would nitpick and find the slightest thing wrong to take away a Native child and place them with a white family to better assimilate Native American children into white society. And the fact that they talked about the Indian Child Welfare Act is fantastic. The fact that they talked about how Native Americans were represented in today's culture. I'm glad that they brought up some very good facts about AIM, and that is a lot of information, particularly for a middle schooler, and how they presented that information to Edie was fantastic. It was a family event. Not only was her mom involved, her dad was involved, even though it wasn't his story to tell, but he was involved because it's his daughter and it's his wife and it's their story. I'm struggling to figure out just how much information is too much versus not enough, and to me this was almost not enough, that I felt like it could have been pushed further. If you have not read this book, I highly encourage it. It does lean upon some good topics. The next book I read was also for Vaultathon, and it fit the prompt of read a book where the main character has a secret. I also feel like it could be put into the nature category to some extent, but Wonder Woman, Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. I've had this for a couple of years. I had tried reading it physically before and just couldn't get into it, and for some reason I had it in my mind that this just wasn't for me, but I kept it because I still want to move on to the rest of the DC Icons series. Borrowed the audiobook from my library, and I actually really enjoyed it. I am surprised with how much I enjoyed this book. This follows Wonder Woman, Diana, and she lives on Themyscira, but rather than a man washing up shore and she finding him, she sees a ship get blown up and hears a cry for help. She dives into the water and finds Alia Corrales. Diana finds out that Alia is a person of interest in her world, that she is a Warbringer, a lineage from Greece. Basically, when one is born, war is soon to follow. So there are people in this world that want Alia dead, so to prevent war, and there's others that want to keep her alive to keep the conflict going. So Diana is trying to help Alia end the Warbringer lineage, but of course there is struggle along the way. Alia is a scientist. She doesn't quite believe Diana in her mythology and her lore. All she wants to do is go back to New York and to the safety of her older brother. This book was interesting. It's not what I expected. For some reason, I understand that Diana is an Amazon, but I didn't know that Alia was Black. I have some content on the struggle that Alia had growing up Black, the lessons that her mother taught her. We do have a lesbian side character who is sassy and great. I loved her. I liked it better than I thought I would. So I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was more of a 3.5. This one is The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. Alicia Dow is, I believe, her debut, and this is Own Voices. So the main character is Janelle, or Ellie Baker, and our world has been taken over by aliens. art, books, music, they're all banned because they inspire rebellion, and the aliens want the humans to be as complicit as possible. But Ellie is keeping a library because she finds that the best escape is through books. So, and she wants to help her fellow humans in this building. So she keeps the library, and she kind of is a secret rebellious librarian. I love this concept, but she ends up getting caught. M0RR1S, or Morris. So the aliens are called Elori, and there are true Elori, and then there's lab-made Elori. Morris is a lab-mate, and so he is seen as lesser than, but in terms of lab-mate Elori, he's at near most respected level he can be. So when he catches Ellie has a library, he makes a deal with her. He likes music. He likes human music. He enjoys it. And so he makes a deal with her in that he won't turn her in for having a library if she finds him more music. And the two end up embarking on a mission to save humanity. I enjoyed the premise of this, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have picked it up. Cover is gorgeous. The premise I loved. However, the book itself I felt was very romance forward, the main part of the book, which wasn't necessarily bad, it was just not what I had intended on reading, nor was it what I expected, so it was a bit of a surprise, and to me it felt like a lot. Morris is super sweet. I enjoyed him. Ellie as a character, I loved her representation. She is a black girl with frizzy hair that she keeps under a purple cap that she calls her purple crown. She is a bigger girl. There are moments, and I didn't know that I needed this, but when authors purposefully don't describe their main characters, but only vaguely as curvy or bigger, but don't necessarily put in how they're curvy or bigger, just so that it feels inclusive, is a real bummer to me. I think Honeymooners by Christina Lauren does this. The main character in there is described as curvy, though to me, curvy just means that you're slightly busty or slightly hippie than was considered normal. So it was hard for me to really picture a bigger girl in that. So when it came to Ellie and it describes her trying to fit clothes, oh my god, I have not felt more seen, in that she goes and tries to put on a top. She's happy it fits because she knows that if it was any smaller, it would be a crop top, and feel that. But the fact that she had multiple wardrobe changes was delightful. The fact she was able to find clothes but admits to having trouble finding them in the past is fantastic. The fact that she can't find proper shoes because nothing fits. Oh my god, I didn't know I needed that. I needed that. It was just so, it warmed my heart. Aside from that though, Morris is a sweetie, but man, he comes on strong. I'm fairly independent, so when it comes to romance like this, it's a little uncomfortable for me. Ellie is Demi. She's Demi in that she needs a connection and trust between her and her partner. This book definitely normalizes they them, and it was just part of the conversation of they them, and as well as what's your pronouns, which was great. That I appreciated. It was just that it was romance heavy, so this was definitely not as high rated as I was hoping to give it. I didn't like it as much as I had hoped to. I did only give this 3 out of 5 stars. It was more of a 3.5. I definitely appreciate it, and Alicia Dow is definitely an author I will be keeping an eye on in the future. And the last book that I read for the month of June was another audiobook that I hope to get a physical copy of, and this was I'll Be Gone in the Dark, one woman's obsessive search for the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara and Gillian Flynn and Patton Oswalt. I was interested in it. I've heard good things. I do listen to My Favorite Murder. My one thing with this book is that the timeline fell all over the place. So that's why I want to get a physical copy, to be able to better understand. I believe that the audiobook was supposed to come with a PDF, but I didn't buy this audiobook. It was a library loan, but it was great. And of course, as soon as I finished it, I timed it pretty well, actually. I finished it on the 28th. The Golden State Killer, or Joseph James D'Angelo's trial, was on the 29th. So that was pretty intense. I did watch bits and pieces of that. He took the plea deal. It sucks that statute of limitation for rape is still a thing. But yeah, so that was convenient timing, as well as the fact that the HBO series I'll Be Gone in the Dark, based off of Michelle McNamara's book, premiered on the 28th. That one I gave also 4.5 out of 5 stars. But I think I rated it down to a 4 just because of the timeline issue for me. Okay, and that is my June wrap up. If you stuck with me so far, I apologize for how long this was. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed me. If you want to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified when I post new content. If you want to follow me on any other platform, I have my Goodreads, Twitter, and Instagram down below. I am still figuring that stuff out, as I did end up making them under the Midnight Librarian as opposed to my old one, so I'm still trying to switch over, which is tedious. Otherwise, pandemic is still happening, COVID is still happening, fighting for social injustices will continue to happen, and links of how to help, of more information, petitions, and places to donate will be down below if you have it in your heart to want to make a change. Otherwise, I hope that you are being safe, that you are washing your hands, that you are social distancing, and I hope that you are in a good mental headspace to continue reading. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video. Bye.